Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag-and-drop fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to The Next Reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
In just a matter of seconds, you're going to hear a classic episode of this show from back in the day when we called ourselves Movies We Like.
It took us a while to settle into the show's format, so you'll notice some differences as you listen to these episodes. For instance, it takes us a bit of time to actually get into the conversation about the movie. Things like that.
But we're still proud of the conversations about the movies themselves, and we think they're worth keeping in the library.
So enjoy these episodes from our back catalog. And you can become part of our Discord community, learn more about the show, and find out how you can become a supporting member at thenextreel.com.
So thank you, everybody, for downloading and listening to The Next Reel. We appreciate your time and attention, and we hope you enjoy the show. We're in the middle of holiday season, Andy.
We are, and you got me making this this glug.
Glug. Andy, that's an umlaut. Glug.
Glug.
I wonder if any of our listeners do the glug. I'll bet some of them do. I have fallen in love with it. Have you fallen in love with it?
I've never tried it before.
Like
I was going to make mulled wine for our holiday party for the New Year's, And then my wife's like, sent me this recipe and is glug. And I'm like, oh, that's the thing that Pete made. I should try it.
Yes. It's just like trash booze. You just take all of, you take all these like stuff that you normally wouldn't necessarily drink together, and then you heat it and you put like orange peel and raisins, cranberries, nuts, almonds. We put almonds in there, and you just cook it.
Right.
And this was a thing we started about 2 weeks ago. I think and when it starts running low, you just refill it, just random. You don't measure. You just pour booze in there again, and it has become a staple. Your house smells like Christmas, and occasionally when you need a little warm me up, a little pick me up, warm me up, there you have it with your glug with an umlaut.
Well, I'm looking forward to trying it.
So have you started putting it together?
Yeah, I did. I got it all put together in the pot.
Do you smell it yet?
Today? Not yet, because it's not heating. Right now it's just kind of, it's soaking in all the spices and everything. And then tomorrow I start cooking, and I add more stuff to it, and I got to get the almonds ready. And it's quite a process. It better be good.
I'm telling you, you're overthinking it. If you're doing this waiting overnight thing, no, you just pour it in and turn on the heat low and just let it go. You were way overthinking.
Well, there's a lot of recipes that I kept finding, and this one is just like, start at 12 hours, get them in the pot at least 12 hours before you start cooking it, so everything can soak up nicely together.
Try it out loud. No, I'm telling you, we turned it on just so I could drink it in a half hour. That's all.
There
that's
you go.
What I care about. Well, I'm proud of you. I am very excited that you're doing this. I can't wait to hear the results.
It should be fun.
We should post your glug review in the show notes.
Of course we should.
Andy's. I'm adding it right now.
Andy's glug review.
Yeah, so you can take care of that.
Too funny.
What else? Do you have anything else to report from your? I have one Star Wars related bit of follow up.
Okay.
I said in our show, I asked the film board if Daniel Craig as JB007 Stormtrooper was his voice. You all said, no, you are all wrong. That is totally Daniel Craig's voice.
I agreed. Fourth viewing, I listened really closely. I'm like, okay, that is Daniel Craig doing an American voice. I completely agree now. Yes. I was wrong. I admit it.
I just wanted to get that out there. I had to clear the air. I knew that if there was anything like that between us, we wouldn't be able to have an honest conversation.
That's right. It's just hanging there.
Yeah. The one thing that I had promised myself that I would do before we talked again is see The Big Short, and I haven't done it.
I did see that. We had our annual anniversary movie-thon, my wife and I, and we saw that, Creed finally, and Sisters. So,
well, A, happy anniversary.
Well, thank you.
And B, just tell me, did you love it?
I think that I was really surprised that Adam McKay made a film that was so good. But man, did it make me so angry. It made me so mad. It was one of those films that just really got under my skin, because it's just, everything in it is just so wrong and bad. But presented in a very beautiful, artistic, cinematic way. Yeah, and very fun.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting the way that he approached topics by bringing in celebrities to kind of pitch it to you.
I think we're going to look back on this as a film that really only Adam McKay could have made.
Yeah.
He has that sensibility that to make this an approachable, like this is going to be one of those films that for me, it's going to feel like a Moneyball.
It was really interesting. I mean, I don't know if I liked the characters as much as I liked them in Moneyball, but I did really like the presentation of the whole story.
Yeah.
And, but these sorts of movies always get me frustrated anyway, because by the time it's done, I try to remember some of the specifics. I'm like, well, I don't quite remember how that stuff worked. Just, not quite my thing.
Yeah. Well, I can't wait to see it. That's one of those things I need to sneak out to do, but it's been
definitely you do.
Obviously been a busy couple of weeks. See, I have this section here, this follow-up section. Star Wars feedback, Gremlins feedback, Pony Prize feedback.
Right.
I think my only bit of Gremlins feedback to friend of the show and Facebook commenter or emailer, Moni. Of course, the reason we did Gremlins is because I had such a crush on Phoebe Cates. end of feedback.
I think we both pretty much affirmed our crushes.
Yeah,
on BBK's
yeah.
when
I
we
don't
were
think
watching that.
I don't think that was
discussing.
a question. I don't think that. I think my only thought is that she commented on us or on the show before she started listening to it, because I think we made our case pretty plain.
I think so too.
Okay. Do we have any other feedback on Star Wars? Or are we done with that?
I think we're done with Star Wars.
Okay. And do we have any feedback on the Pony Prize?
Feedback, yeah. I mean, people are thrilled that they are going to be receiving it. I'm not sure what feedback
people are thrilled. When we start speaking in the royal, we the people are thrilled that we will be receiving the prize of the ponies.
No,
it's a trap. Yeah. Okay, that's it for I think we should probably just tell the people where we're from.
Yes, where are we from?
This is The Next Reel on RashPixel.fm, everybody. I'm Pete Wright, and that right over there is Andy Nelson.
Howdy, howdy, howdy.
And we spoil movies. Tonight on the show, it's a big, fat, happy new year with Paul Thomas Anderson's 1997 Boogie Nights.
That's something.
Before we get into that, you should learn more about us at thenextreel.com. Subscribe to the show on iTunes or follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Next Reel. And for all you who've given yourselves a good once-over in the mirror when no one else is looking, you should head over to The Next Reel's Instagram, #PonyPrize, #Guess the Movie Challenge.
But this week, folks, we've decided to give Stephen a week off, so no trip to Scotland. Instead, we thought we'd have a chat with our 2015 t-shirt and poster designer, Joel Micah Harris.
Joel Micah Harris. It's been too long, my friend. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Hey, glad to have you.
This year, we were so stoked for Star Wars that we decided to do an homage to one of our favorite series. It deserved proper treatment. And so we just came to you and said, hey, bleh, here's this idea. What do you think of this?
Well, it was a little bit more complicated than that. You actually had sent me a poster from the first Star Wars. Is that right?
Yeah, that's one of the original.
Yeah, one of the
Hope
originals,
posters.
right?
Yeah, and you said basically just kind of inspiration for me to go off of, and as I was piecing it together based on the 5 films that you guys ranked the highest in Flickchart this year, I was basically putting the pieces together and realizing that this kind of fits in with the exact design of the original poster. So I sent Pete an email saying, okay, picture instead of Darth Vader, fill in the blank, instead of Luke Skywalker, put this person there, etc. And it just kind of fell into place from there. And I think it worked out really well.
Needless to say, we do too.
Including ponies.
Yeah.
You want ponies into it. I love it so much.
Somehow, we made it work. I didn't think it was possible, but it worked, I think.
How do you, can you just talk a little bit about your process? Like, how do you actually do these things?
Okay, well, in this case, it was actually simplified because I didn't have to actually do the design conceptually as far as laying it out. So thank you, Pete, for that. You took care of that part. But what I did was essentially I took that original poster and I where I could, I would get reference photos, and I would kind of do a collage in Photoshop, and then I would I don't want to get too technical, but I would just create layers, and on each layer I would digitally ink with a Wacom pen and tablet the characters, and I would just digitally literally draw over the original characters on the poster if I didn't have reference. Can we give spoilers as to which characters are on the poster, or is that?
Yeah. What do you think, Andy? Is it all right? I think it's all right.
I think it's totally fair.
Yes, let's give spoilers.
Okay, so in the case of let's say Mason from Snowpiercer, I had photo reference for her face, so I kind of pasted that onto Princess Leia's body, and this is kind of weird fan fiction material going on here, but and then I basically just created a layer over that, and I digitally drew over that, and I literally on the fly while I was drawing over Princess Leia's body, I just drew what Mason was wearing in Snowpiercer. So, and then the coloring process is just a more advanced process, slightly more advanced than taking crayons to a coloring book. So.
Well, you make it sound so easy.
Yeah, you mentioned the magic button earlier. I pushed the magic button and boom,
and there it is.
There
well,
it is.
It looks far more beautifully complex than you make it sound. It's just fantastic.
Well, I was hesitant to put ponies in the photo, but I did it for you guys, and then Pete suggested adding a monkey. So I'm like, you know what? Why not? We have ponies. Let's put a monkey in there. So, what more could you ask for? You've got ponies, you've got a monkey, you've got 5 great films represented. So
6, really.
Well,
Yeah,
exactly.
It's a film board film. Yeah,
I was just realizing. Yeah.
That's right. That's right. Well, it is terrific, and so this year we're doing. We've released not only the T-shirt, but we're going to be putting this on other things. We've got a movie poster for the next reel this year that you can pick up, and all of these things showcase just great work of Joel Micah Harris. So
well, thank you, and I believe I heard you mention underwear.
If we can do it, we're gonna do it. We're gonna put this everywhere you can put Immortan Joe's giant head.
Well,
who doesn't want that?
Who doesn't want that on their underwear?
Yep, I'll leave that one alone.
So I'm just thrilled. I'm going to put this on everything I can. If I can buy it with the next reel poster this year on it, I'm going to do it. iPhone cases, you bet.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'd be interested in some of that actually too. So.
There you go. Well, this is the place to do it. We're going to set it up on the website. You can take the link just to the store. But where would you like people to go find out more about you, Mr. Harris?
Well, really, the only thing I'm actively participating in is my art gallery at joemiha.net. That's jomiha.net. I am on Facebook and Twitter, but I'm not very active in the social media circles these days. So I would say, just go to joemiha.net.
You should definitely, go to Joe Miha. You can subscribe to the Joe Miha email, and you can check out. You've got to check out, because I don't know where you get inspired to do this stuff, but man, the month of December was great with a series of punk icons that you did. That was just terrific. I mean, everything you touch is just great, but I really loved it. And of course the Lemmy. The Lemmy piece was inspired. So
I was like many other fans. I was bummed out that Lemmy Kilmister, he was seemingly immortal, and to find out he passed away was pretty saddening. So I think I drew that piece that same night that he had passed away. But I wanted to give that one a little bit of the edge that Lemmy had, which I don't normally put in my artwork, but I still censored it a little bit.
A little bit, but appropriately so. Yeah. Well, it is. It's just lovely work. So joemiha.net, check it out, and thank you so much, Joel, for just participating and lending your craft to this year's art. It's, as always.
Thank you for the opportunity. I had a blast doing it, and we'll be back next year, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Count on it.
Awesome. Excellent.
You may know Ben as the winner of the 2015 Pony Prize. We know him as the Blotspot, and he shared his thoughts on Gremlins.
He said, I feel like you're expecting some kind of negative reaction from me on Gremlins, but I found it to be a lot of fun. The humor worked well, and I absolutely loved the puppet work. Gizmo was too cute for words, and Dying Stripe was absolutely revolting, which was cool. I think the biggest shortcoming in the movie is it gets bogged down a little too much in gremlin antics, particularly in the bar and movie theater. Because of this, I started to lose track of where the protagonists were. Still, it was a fun movie and a great alternative holiday film for those who hate Christmas. Your rank 132 out of 216. My rank 77 out of 216.
Why, Andy, did I expect a negative reaction from Ben on Gremlins? Why was that so clear in my head? We're going to do this movie. He's going to hate it.
I think he usually is not a fan of horror movies, but it is that fun blend of kind of comedy horror, and I think it now, looking at it now, it certainly emphasizes the comedy over the horror. I think the little young self, when I first saw this in the movie theater, the horror was a little more emphatic, but times change.
Well, I certainly appreciate that, and I love being surprised by our weekly Blot Spot. So this was a good one. Andy, I think it's time. Let's do trailers.
So my trailer, Pete, is Desierto.
Do you have to say it like that to see it?
You do. Otherwise, they won't let you in. That's just part of it. Sorry.
Okay. All right, I'll try.
Yes. No, this is the follow-up. Alfonso Cuarón and his son are following up Gravity, which we all loved. We talked about on the show in one of our film boards a couple years ago. This is the follow-up, Desierto, and this is a group of people trying to cross the border from Mexico into the U.S. And they encounter a man who basically has taken up being a border patrol person on his by himself, and just basically taking people out. And Jeffrey Dean Morgan is basically hunting down these immigrants, and it looks like a really interesting film. And as this is something that we regularly hear stories about in Arizona, not quite to this extreme, I thought it would actually be a fitting trailer to discuss. So, Gael Garcia Bernal plays Moises, a guy who's crossing with a group, and they see another group, and then all of a sudden they start getting picked off, and then it basically looks like it's kind of a horror movie is really what it looks like, right? One of these kind of horror movies where people are on the run and somebody is slowly picking them off one by one. And it just looks really freaky. And I think it also is very fitting with kind of, just kind of the situation going on along our border right now. So I'm quite excited to see this one. Jonas Cuarón is actually directing this one, and his dad, Alfonso, is producing. And so it looks really interesting. I'm quite excited to see it. What do you think?
There are a couple of things I can't quite get past as somebody who lives in the sponge that is Oregon. It's really hot.
Yes.
On the border. It is really hot, and I think it just looks super hot. He really nailed that. I love it. I love the introducing the horror in the trailer when you have the whole group standing there in the middle of that wide open space and they just start falling. I thought that was just terrifying. The dog is terrifying. I mean, just everything about it really looks like it captures the terror of isolation and the feast that animals and snakes and things could have upon you if you were really running for your life in that situation. So I don't have the context that you do because we don't have those kinds of stories. We don't hear so much about the border stuff, up here. For me, it's just Jeffrey Dean Morgan, one of my favorites. So you can bet I'll be there.
It's funny, when I was watching the trailer at first, I thought that it was Antonio Banderas because he looked so much like him.
With the beard.
That's a really interesting twist.
Yeah.
Having Antonio Banderas play a guy who's actually taking these people out. But no, it's Jeffrey Dean Morgan.
Yeah.
They just both have that very similar looking graying beards right now.
I'm telling you, it does change my opinion about cacti. Let me just say, it reinforces my opinion about cacti.
Yes. They're not fun things.
They don't belong.
The desert is a very grueling place. It's designed to hurt you.
Yeah.
Scorpions, rattlesnakes, cacti, heat. It's just not a fun place.
Hey,
why do I live here? I don't know.
When's it coming out?
It comes out March 4th.
So speaking of things that are designed to hurt you,
yes.
Predictably, I'm doing Deadpool. New trailer came out. Director Tim Miller, Rob Liefeld wrote the character, along with Fabian Nicieza, but the screenplay was written by Rhett Reese and Paul Wernick. That we have talked about this before. I can't wait for this movie. This is the movie that Ryan Reynolds was born to play. The character he was born to play. Was he not? Seriously, Wade Wilson, Deadpool? He is perfect in this character. I'm so bullish on him in this role. The trailer shows a lot of great character stuff of him as Deadpool. We see more of the making of Deadpool. We see more of his transformation in the lab. We see more of Marina Baccarin's character as a copycat in this in the film, and she looks great. Sometimes I feel like the stretch to create, quote, strong female characters. We go a bridge too far in the scripts when we hear things like damsel in distress is not a role I usually play. That kind of turns me off, especially after seeing such a great delivery of Rey in Star Wars. And so, there are those kinds of things that I could let go of those little quips. But otherwise, I'm very excited to see this. We do see Colossus, and
Yes.
of course, we see Negasonic Teenage Warhead, Ellie Phimister, I think. I'm not sure. I've never heard it. Played by Brianna Hildebrand. And, of course, the always hysterical TJ Miller. Love that dude.
It looks really funny. I never really knew who Deadpool was. My only experience was the Wolverine movie where Ryan Reynolds played Deadpool and his mouth got sealed shut.
Right.
So that I really had no idea who this character was. And but I kept seeing everybody dressing like Deadpool at Comic-Con. I was like, okay, so it's clearly a popular character. It just wasn't in my circles. And then I saw the trailer and I got it. So it's like, oh, okay, this is why people love this character so much. It's definitely an over-the-top comic book movie that you're not going to be taking your kids to see. It's pretty raunchy. I still think it looks pretty funny. I'm excited to see this one, and I'm curious to see how it ends up playing out, because it's definitely not your average Marvel or DC sort of comic book movie.
That's the thing that I wonder if they're, how do they integrate Deadpool into, X-Men?
Yeah, right.
Right. And I don't know where this. Do you know anything about the politics of this particular film? Like, where does it exist between X-Men and the other Marvel production? This is strictly Marvel, right?
I think so. I think it's strictly Marvel.
I think it's just Marvel.
But it's Fox, so it's on the Fox side of the fence with the X-Men properties and.
This is actually an X-Men Origins film. I did not know that.
Yeah, it's in that side of things.
Yeah.
So, but I don't know. To me, it just doesn't seem like they can safely bring Deadpool into the X-Men films, because it just doesn't seem like the sort of thing that crowd, like a parent can't take their kids to Deadpool.
Right.
So they're not going to take their kids to an X-Men movie with Deadpool in it.
Right.
If they keep Deadpool kind of this way.
Right. Right. That's the thing. This is Deadpool couldn't really be Deadpool in, Apocalypse.
Right. Exactly.
Anyhow.
But I do like that they're branching out and doing different things. And this goes back to what we said with comic book movies, how the next step is to make them not just a comic book movie, but to actually give them different genres and a different feel. Like, Captain America had the second one had a more kind of political conspiracy thriller sort of vibe to it. This one has this kind of dark comedy edge to it. And so it's nice seeing that they are kind of playing with that as they explore different types of comic book movies.
Well, I think when we get to that real sort of when they're really taking those kinds of risks, I think we'll end up seeing a film version of Jessica Jones, where it's a comic book character, but it's a character that that doesn't wear the spandex. Right. That's the next level of sort of maturity I would love to see, is this character with these strange abilities and also trying to integrate in life. The new I think it was released as part of the new 54 or whatever it was, the most recent Hawkeye comic is Hawkeye when he's at home. Like, it's all the stories of Hawkeye when he's not on the team. And that's the story of Clint Barton that I actually would be really interested in seeing. And seeing Jeremy Renner and, hanging out with Linda Cardellini on their ranch, and what are the action set pieces that come to them? What are the things that he does when he's not actually, an Avenger?
Oh, that would be kind of interesting.
Yeah. I would like to see that sort of branching out. I'm eager for that kind of branching out that I don't think we've seen yet. Anyway, Deadpool hits February 12th, 2016. Even though he's in spandex, I can't wait to see it. Andy,
Pete,
when I close my eyes, I see this thing, a sign. I see this name in bright blue neon lights with a purple outline, and this name is so bright and so sharp that the sign, it just blows up because the name is so powerful. It says Dirk Diggler.
Everyone's given one special thing, right? Everyone's blessed with one special thing. I want you to know I plan on being a star. A big, bright, shining star.
Eddie Adams from Torrance.
Yep.
Jack Horner, filmmaker. I make exotic pictures.
In 1977, a kid from nowhere.
Maybe think about your name.
My name, yeah.
Something with a little pizzazz.
Dirk Diggler. Good name.
I like your name a lot.
Had a dream of getting somewhere.
Jack Horner has found something special in newcomer Dirk Diggler.
So let me just pop in this 8-track, and you just give a listen and tell me what you think, okay?
It was a time when disco was king.
These are the ones. These are great.
Yeah, those are really cool. Are they lizard?
No, they're Italian.
Do you like my shoes?
They're pretty cool.
Sex was safe.
Woohoo!
Pleasure was a business.
Cut. Terrific. Nice work.
And business was booming.
And the award for Best Newcomer goes to Mr. Dirk Diggler.
Wow.
Here we are, Andy. This is the one, 1997. It's our Happy New Year movie.
Happy New Year, Pete.
You know who else loves Happy New Year movies like this? William H. Macy.
Boy, does he.
If you want to celebrate New Year's, you celebrate like William H. Macy. Woo, that's dark.
That is dark.
This is Paul Thomas Anderson, written and directed by Paul Thomas Anderson, starring everybody.
Pretty much.
This film. Wow, this film has a lot of people in it. Our protagonist, the young, cut from marble, Mark Wahlberg, and mentored by the great Burt Reynolds, mothered by the lovely Julianne Moore, and brothered by John C. Reilly. How's that? The whole family.
It is a whole family.
Mixed up family.
And you could say sistered by Heather Graham.
By Heather Graham. He's sistered by Heather Graham. This movie, I got to tell you, Andy, I don't feel guilty when I say. Well, let me just say this. What did you expect me to say about this movie?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like we've talked about it, and I feel like we both like it. So I assumed I expected you to say you liked it.
Well, then you cheated. It's like you read ahead. I will tell you, I loved this movie. I actually loved it even more now, and I just loved looking into it and looking into the background of it and thinking about it. I think there is so much more of a story here of this cultural reflection I love so much to think about than I had even remembered, and so I was deeply satisfied by this film in this particular viewing. What about you?
Are you saying it satisfied you?
Deeply. Should not have said that. I should not have said that.
This is going to be one of these shows, isn't it?
It really is. This is why we're PG.
Big, deep satisfaction.
Oh, man. You don't have to hang a flag on it.
This is a great movie. I mean, it really is a solid story. It's a dark story, and I feel dirty every time I watch it. But there's so much here. I think that the characters that Paul Thomas Anderson put together are such fascinating people, despite the kind of the dark world in which they inhabit and the dark paths that they definitely take over the course of the film. I think that for his second film, I think Anderson really shows a lot of filmmaking bravura. Is that how you say that word? Bravura?
Yes, it is. I was about to taunt you.
It was one of those words that's like you say it sounds stupid. Is that a real word?
It was good. Delivery was right on. You should roll your R's.
Bravura.
Yeah. You were saying?
Oh, Lord Almighty. He's really, boy, is he sharp as a tack. This filmmaker. He's a great filmmaker, and out of the gate, well, with his second film, I think he really shows he's not afraid to try things and take chances and tell stories that may not be ones that people easily latch onto. And I think that it just really kind of showed the world that he's a filmmaker that is worth noticing and one that we definitely should be paying attention to. And I think, his body of work for the most part since then, I think it's definitely, he's proven that.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely, and I think the just the artistry in constructing the film is just terrific. If you haven't seen it, which I assume you have by now if you're listening to this show, but if you haven't seen it, it's a story of adult film director Jack Horner. That's Burt Reynolds. He's the grizzled veteran of the porn industry. He's on the lookout for new talent, and he meets Dirk Diggler's, or I should say, Mark Wahlberg's Eddie Adams before he takes his stage name. He's a busboy in their club, a club run by Luis Guzman, who is just hysterical in this film as a club owner aspiring to be a porn actor. And it turns out that Eddie Adams is well endowed young man, and he is paid $5 to $10 to show off his wares, and that's so he has a little bit of background, and he jumps into the porn industry that way. It is dare I say, a Cinderella story. Would you agree?
Yeah, that's I think a good way to describe the movie. I think that Anderson has said, as a fan of porn, at least particularly at the time of his life when he put this together, he kind of explored the golden age of the porn world, which happened in the late 70s. I think it started kind of early 70s into the 80s when video was introduced, and he kind of used that as this world to kind of paint this. And I think that's one of the really interesting things about this is you have such an interesting character with Burt Reynolds, Jack Horner, as this guy who really sees more to these films that he's making than just your average smut. And I think that that's such an interesting way to kind of look at this, that these are people who see that they can kind of make quote unquote art with this within this world in which they're working. And I love that you get this development in Eddie Adams' character, and as he becomes Dirk Diggler, and then as he and his buddy John C. Reilly, Reed Rothschild, as they kind of go the way of I'm going to blank on that porn actor's name, John Holmes, who had that character Johnny Wad. Dirk Diggler kind of creates his own character that's kind of along the lines of this Johnny Wad character. It's kind of a porn character, but he fights crime and it's just like they create these really stupid stories, but people were interested in those sorts of, porn movies that had a little more story to it. And it's interesting to see kind of that progression in this as it leads into the world of video and the 80s and everything falling apart.
Well, and that's one of the things that excites me so much about this movie is that this is not a movie about sex.
Right.
Yeah. This is a movie about the massive just sort of tectonic shift in industry that completely upended these people's lives right? In so many ways. These are just ordinary people, and they have their dreams of fame and stardom, and that's a story we've heard countless times, right? That I could be somebody, I could have been a contender here, but in this case, these people are using the sort of palette of the sex industry, the porn industry, as a way to tell these stories of ordinary people who are striving for greatness, and they're doing everything they can to make the choices that they know how to make to be successful while the industry is changing around them. I mean, this could just as easily been, a story around the coal mines. It could have been around the steel industry in Detroit. It could have been, whatever it is, when technology comes in and upends your industry, this is the story of that fallout. And I think for me, appreciating this film in that light makes it just that much more powerful a story, watching these characters kind of unravel, as they kind of reap the fruits of their lives in the third act.
Well, and I think what's so important is that it's aside from that, it's also about family, right? It's about this beautiful relationship that these people have as they these are lost souls. I mean, we really see that with Mark Wahlberg's character. We see him really kind of struggling with his own family. Mm-hmm. And that's, I think, such an amazing relationship that we see. And there's so little of it, but I love the relationship between him and his mother. That it's just this really painful world that he's coming from. Joanne Gleason playing his mother, and then you see a little bit of his father, who's just kind of not around. But there's trouble in his home life, and it's really painful, and you never really get a sense as to what's causing it. You just get this sense that his mother has issues that she's dealing with, and she takes a lot of it out on her son. And the father is there, but he's really not present, and he doesn't know how to deal with any of it. And it's very difficult, and it's painful. And that could be a movie in and of itself, right? Mm-hmm. That could be a really interesting family struggle as this son, Eddie, tries to figure out, how to deal with his parents, because he just can't connect with them, and his mother is taking everything out on him. That's a really interesting story right there. And but it's just a tiny part of this movie as we see how it breaks Eddie. And it's so painful to watch him as he has that fight with his mother as she kind of kicks him out of the house. Which is so good, right? Because isn't that such a sign of respect for the audience that, in fact, we don't get much of that backstory, that we know that story, right? We've internalized that story already, so we get just enough that we need so that we understand his motivation to leave, and the rest we get. Right. And then we see him welcomed with open arms by Jack Horner into this world. And, I mean, we already know that Eddie is well endowed, and he's probably somebody who can go far in this particular industry. But it's more than that. It's the fact that this is a group of people who welcome him and take him in for who he is, and they respect him, and they want to be a part of his life, and they want him to be a part of theirs. And I think that's what's really important, is that this familial dynamic becomes so key here throughout the film as we explore this other world, like you were talking about, how this technology is changing all of these people's lives. And I think that's what's I find so fascinating, is that Anderson is really looking at all of this as he explores this group of people.
I think that's a really interesting point, that about this discussion of family. First of all, this film really is, I think you're right on. This is very much about what is the value, or what is the definition of family when you take away the biological constraint. Because very much there is a family atmosphere at Horner's house, right? That's just where they are, and they use the trappings and the language, the vernacular of family. There's a particular scene in the third act with, Julianne Moore and Heather Graham, where Heather actually says, as Roller Girl, I want you to be my mom. Will you please be my mom? And you see that just that crying out for that sort of maternal support, even though there's no biological connection between them at all. So I think that's really interesting. The other thing that I think is interesting, and where we get into the more sort of defined fantasy of the film, is just how perfect the adult film industry is that we are introduced to in this film. Right, the first act, and really into the second act, the adult film industry, as represented by Jack Horner's world and the Colonel's world, is perfect. It is the ideal world, right? They're people. They enjoy one another's company. They have these great lavish, parties. They're very casual. They have lots of sex with one another, and that's okay. And there are no complications at all until we start seeing the first sign of complication. That little Bill, played by William H. Macy, his wife, played by Nina Hartley, she's a nymphomaniac and an exhibitionist, and she has sex with everybody, and she'll do it in a parking lot with like 15 guys standing around, and she is incredibly abusive to her husband, verbally abusive to her husband.
Yeah.
And that's the first sort of straw that we get to pull out. And that one continues to sort of unravel the thread of this perfect tableau that Anderson creates in this script. And that ends up being sort of the porn fairy tale, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it is that wonderful life. And he sets it up. Anderson sets that up so nicely at the beginning of the film. Once he's introduced to this world, it's just, we get that wonderful period of just nothing but celebration of this, right? I mean, all the awards that they win and all the wonderful clothes they get to buy, and there's even a dance sequence where everybody all of a sudden busts out into the perfectly choreographed disco, which is hilarious, and I just love that it fits so well in there. And I think his filmmaking style, aside from the fact that it works so well telling this story as how it unfolds, but I think that Anderson's filmmaking itself exemplifies all of those story points as well. It's such a fluid movement with his camera all through the film. He really has, you can see his influences from Martin Scorsese. He says Jonathan Demme is a big influence. Robert Altman, all these different filmmakers have a lot of stuff that he's pulled from, and you can really see in the way that the camera moves through the film a lot of the Scorsese the vibe that we have going on here, and then also the cutting, the way that Dylan Tichenor cuts the film together. It's cut in a way, and the camera moves in a way where everything feels alive and it's really exciting, and all of that works so well to paint this picture.
Well, you've got to talk some more about tracking shots, the utility of tracking shots in this film in particular, because this isn't just a film with one of those legendary tracking shots, particularly the opening shot, which, it introduces us to the world as we follow Luis Guzman, and it's great, and it is a beautiful way to introduce us to all of our key characters in the film, in the part of the world that they interact within. But this whole film is an extension of tracking shots, and they're everywhere.
Oh yeah,
so talk
the party,
a little bit,
the house,
yeah,
they're everywhere.
Talk about why why do so many tracking shots work so well in this film, where other films I might say, wow, that's overkill. And I've said so for example, in Robert Altman films, it becomes tiresome. But for some reason in this film it works. What is your take on that?
My sense is that it feels, it has a much more modern feel. I think Altman works in context of kind of Altman films, but I also can find sometimes his films to be just a little much. I think it feels modern in the way that he's doing it here, and I think Anderson has a sense of fluidity in not just the way the camera moves, but in the way that the story is told, and it goes really quickly. And I think it almost has kind of an Edgar Wright sort of feel to it, the way that things move fast. And I think that's, for me, I think that's why it works well here, because we're meeting all these characters, wham bam, like in the beginning. And I don't know how long that tracking shot is, a couple minutes, where we're kind of moving through the club. We meet so many characters. It's moving so fast. We're just getting little hints of conversation, not even conversation that really plays into anything, but you just get little bits and pieces that just kind of give you a sense of who these characters are as we're flying along and leading up to Eddie as he kind of makes that connection with Jack's character. And it just moves fast. And likewise at the party. And you see a lot of that fast stuff happening at the first party when Eddie comes to Jack's place and he has that big pool party. And you've got things happening where the camera, it goes through the house and you see all these characters. But then the camera follows a girl as she goes outside and jumps into the pool, and the camera jumps into the water with her and goes underwater with her before it comes back up. That's not something I would say I've seen in an Altman film. Now, I'm not as familiar with all of Altman's work, but I don't think that he's done anything quite that alive where the camera is actually so interactive in those moments. So I don't know. For me, that would be kind of what I think as why it's working more for us, perhaps.
There's an interesting mechanic that strikes me that I want to go back and watch the film again because it only occurred to me at the end, is that one of the initial setups that we get for this tracking shot is we see a woman on wheels, right? With Roller Girl,
Yep.
It's like she's flying through the set. And for some reason, for me, as I watch that visually, I am able to kind of be a part of her POV a little bit. And so the tracking shot suddenly makes a lot more intuitive sense to me as I move through the spaces of this film. And once I'm introduced to that mechanic in the opening sequence, that opening 3-minute through the Hot Tracks Club, every other tracking shot allows me to take part in a roller skating tour of the set and the sequence, I should say. And I adore that. For me, it's a very visceral, sort of physical, personal invitation to be a part of the film in a way that few films allow me to do. And I think the mechanic setting it on, putting a character on wheels the whole time is both great for her character, but it's also interestingly good for the mechanics of the camera. What do you think?
Yeah. No, I think that's a really astute observation, the fact that we actually are taken into the camera movement through a character. I think that's a brilliant way of picking up on that.
Whew, man, I was hoping for a point. That's good. I got some points on the board tonight. I'm a shining star.
You're a star. You're a big, bright, shining star.
Big, bright, shining star. Anyway, this film is an exercise in tracking shots. You should check them out and do some Google searches for images of the maps. There are some folks who have made some really beautifully detailed maps of the tracking shots through different scenes in Boogie Nights that are fun to watch. Did you happen to get a chance to watch the Dirk Diggler story?
I feel like I watched that when I first got the DVD of this. I feel like I watched it, but honestly, I can't remember. I know that it's the short that he made, kind of a mockumentary, when he was still in high school.
He did, in high school. This was it was the story of Dirk Diggler. It was supposed to be, according to Anderson at the time, it's a half hour, it's about 31 minutes, and you can find it on YouTube. I've linked to it in the show notes. It is a half hour on the background of Dirk Diggler that he made in mockumentary style. And in an interview with Charlie Rose, when this came out, when the Boogie Nights came out, he said, I feel like I made that 31 minutes and I apparently had 2 more hours to add to it. And that's what Boogie Nights is. So it's actually interesting to watch. Obviously, it was shot all on tape, and it was shot on video cassette, which is an interesting, ironic twist that the film ends up being about the transition to video. But it was an interesting thing to watch today. I found myself really, it wasn't great, but you could see hints of Paul Thomas Anderson in it. And,
right.
And it was delightful, kind of icing on the cake that is this film.
And Michael Stein played Dirk Diggler in that, and I think in this he's the customer. In the actual movie, I think he's the stereo store customer who gets turned off by Swope's tunes, right? Country tunes. Right. And then Robert Ridgely played Jack Horner in the short, and he, of course, has a much bigger part in this.
The Colonel.
As the Colonel, right?
Who makes for one of the more interesting characters, because there are these, there are the porn stars, right? We'll call them kind of the kids, right? They come in and they're the actors, and then there's kind of the technicians, and they watch and they have their own weird quirks. Oh my God, Philip Seymour Hoffman, and then there are the patriarchs, right? And we're introduced to 3 of them.
Right.
We have, obviously, Jack Horner, who's the director and filmmaker and artiste. We have the Colonel, who's the money man, the investor behind these things, a producer. And we have the theater owner, who's played by Philip
Baker Hall.
Philip Baker Hall, right? Those are the three sort of patriarchs of the film. These are the men who, the old white men who run this interpretation of the industry.
And Philip Baker Hall, I thought he was another money man, but more in line of the video side of things rather than.
Well,
was he a theater owner?
Well, that was the thing. That's what his first meeting with Jack is to come in and say, "Look, I've been in the theater business for a long time, and I'm telling you, we have to change. We have to get into video, and I want your actors so that we can start making videos." And so, my interpretation was he was the infrastructure guy. He was like,
sure.
I'm used to this. I'm used to funding films and getting films in front of people, but now we need to move to video. And so that's what he represents. And I think what's, for me, back to the Colonel is the big money guy. The way we're introduced to them again in this art, in the sort of the artifice of the fantasy of porn industry, they're the perfect guys to kind of run this thing. They're nice. They supply everybody with the right amount of drugs, and they take care of them. When the girl ODs, he says, take her to the hospital, leave her there, dump her there, don't attach her to me, but take her to the hospital. And he ends up getting caught for child pornography charges.
Yeah.
And is sent to jail, and is ultimately, portrayed as a, he's beaten pretty badly in jail and so he doesn't handle prison well, and so that transformation I think is interesting. What does that tell us about this world that we have been a part of for the last 2.5 hours, when we see the patriarchs fall quite like that?
Well, yeah, but it's like everybody. I mean, you have that sort of stuff going on in all sorts of different stories. You've got the dark drug story. You've got Todd coming in, and you've got that darkness that kind of goes into it. You've got some of the prostitution that comes in. You've got the mothering issue that happens to Amber. There's a lot of dark elements that kind of ride through everybody's different worlds, and I think it's a pretty interesting take on all of it, and how some of it works out well, like Buck and meeting Melora Walters' character, and how they kind of hit it off and end up creating a family, and in a very dark twist, how he ends up getting funded to kind of make his own stereo company. But I think it's a really interesting look at some of the positives and negatives that kind of come out of all of this,
I do, and I think that's a really good point. There are two sequences of great action sequences in this film that are as exhilarating and intense as some of the great sequences in True Romance that we love so much. By way of setup, Don Cheadle's character is fantastic in this film. He is an identity crisis porn star turned hi-fi stereo pitchman, and he is great. Every bit of incidental dialogue, every passing sequence we get with him is perfect. Whether it's from him trying out his cowboy costume to trying out his glam costume, 70s glam costume, to finally his white-on-white suit costume, which ends up being the one that sort of sticks. He's just terrific. So he goes into this donut shop, and he's picking up donuts for his pregnant wife who's in the car outside. And there is one other gentleman in the donut restaurant, the donut shop, eating his donuts and reading his paper, and Cheadle is being served, and as the guy is putting donuts in the box, a man comes in to rob the donut shop. So the proprietor of the donut shop is putting money in the bag. The money is in the bag from the safe, and then we have a civilian with a gun who pulls out the gun, shoots the robber. Robber falls back, shoots the
man with the gun.
Man with the gun accidentally goes off and shoots the donut shop owner, leaving no witnesses and a bag of money. And Don Cheadle suddenly has his stereo shop funded. And that was awesome. I mean, terrible, and like ripped from the headlines, terrible. But the mechanics of the sequence worked so well that I was able to look past it. And Cheadle's look of horror just sold it for me.
Look of horror, and then look of, I can't believe that this just happened.
Yeah.
And there's a bag of money, and no one will know. And just the way he looks at it, it's just so great. It plays so nicely.
Well, and this really showcases the influence of Tarantino on Anderson's work, too. I mean, this really just feels very much like a Tarantino sequence.
The shift in tone, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, the way that it can go from, dramatic to violent or comedic definitely plays into Tarantino's rule book here.
The other sequence I would love for you to reflect on a little bit is the sequence where we go meet with Todd to deliver the baking soda.
Yeah, that's the sequence where this is kind of after basically everything has kind of started falling, and Dirk Diggler has kind of he has kind of, I guess you could say, broken up with Jack Horner. They have he and Reed have left and are doing drugs, and they're trying to create a successful music career with some truly, truly awful music. And they end up befriending this guy Todd, played by Thomas Jane, who knows this guy who's got money. And this is actually pulled, money and drugs. And this is kind of pulled also from Holmes's life with the Wonderland murders. Basically, Thomas Jane's character says, "Hey, this guy has got a lot of drugs, and let's go buy some. Let's go sell him this drugs that we bought." I'm getting it all backwards. And so they go over to his house, and he is freaking out on drugs. He's crazy, crazy man. Alfred Molina plays the most whacked character, just on drugs, standing in his Speedo and a robe. And he's got a Chinese man throwing firecrackers, as just kind of walking around the room throwing these firecrackers. He's jamming to tunes, and they're trying to sell him these drugs and get the cash. And meanwhile there's this big bodyguard there with a gun, and it's the most intense scene. The way the firecrackers are going off, the way that Alfred Molina plays just this kind of insanity of this character, listening to the music and trying to get them to stay. And these guys are all kind of starting to freak out. And then we have Thomas Jane's character starts kind of saying, "Hey, I want everything else that's in your safe also, the safe that's under your bed, all of your money, all your drugs, I want everything," and turns this situation into something that's truly awful and terrifying. And meanwhile, we have Eddie Adams and Reed just sitting there like, what is going on? We got to get out of this freaking place. It is the most intense, terrifying sequence, and it's done so well. And the firecrackers, I think that is what really makes the scene, because as this scene is playing, you've got this constant little explosions going off. That's just, I mean, it is like, I find myself flinching every time the actors are flinching, because these things, it's like gunshots going off. It's real great, intense filmmaking at a perfect point in the film where your nerves are rattled and you're already on edge.
That's what I was hoping that was your reaction to the scene too. I think those firecrackers are so annoying at first, and they become like the central pulse of the entire sequence, so that by the end, I mean, really, you are amped up to 11. It is a fantastically thrilling and weirdly funny sequence, particularly the resolution of it, as they kind of get out and start running. At least Reed and Dirk get out, and they run to this now pretty much beaten up competition orange Corvette Stingray, and they start pushing it down the hill, and Reed isn't able to get in the car. He runs off into somebody's lawn, and Dirk ends up pushing it back over to Jack Horner's house
because it's out of fuel.
Because it's out of fuel, right? It ends up being just a really humbling, humiliating sequence, and that ends up being the transformation for a moment for Dirk to realize that he was the little man and had to learn some lessons, and he ends up going back to apologize, and it ends up being a really wonderful, I think, sweet homecoming back into the arms of his father figure, the only guy who had ever accepted him in that capacity. And I think that worked really well. And it works really well for me for Burt Reynolds too, because we lose Burt. Burt comes in the first 2 acts and he's so solid and he really owns every single scene. And then when things start falling apart, we kind of lose track of him too. He's kind of going through his own transformation, trying to understand this new world, this new business, and that's not as interesting, I think, for me as a viewer. And so we kind of lose track of him until he gets back into the director's chair and gets more excited about bringing the family back together. That redemption is what kind of clues me back into his character.
Yeah, it's the reconnection at the end that brings the family back together in a place where they all have to make changes. And I think that's a really nice strength as the film draws to a close, is you have people rolling with the times. They've adapted to this new video world that they've had to adapt to. It's not what they want to do, but damn it, Jack is still going to try to make as the best films he can make, with Dirk and Amber and Roller Girl and everybody starring in it. But Amber is also going to kind of keep moving into directing some of her own stuff, whether it's documentaries about Dirk or a commercial for Buck, and he's got his own stereo place. And so it's nice to see that they are still a family. They're still in the world that they're in, but they're all changing with the times and trying to do it now together. And I think that was the strength of the way that the film ends.
I think you're absolutely right. And in some respects, I love it because it's the resolution, it's the circle of life, and we come back to this sort of fantasy, and they're all back on set together, and they have learned something from each of their escapades. They've gotten off the drugs, and we didn't even talk about it. I mean, there is a significant amount of drug use in this film. I mean, they do a lot of drugs, and the drugs are damaging in a non-trivial way in this film in terms of the lessons that they have, these people have to learn. And so it's certainly not roses, this porn business. But then we get back to the fantasy, right? The circle is complete, and now we're back on set by the pool, and we're making a porn movie, and so that's it. And we're back to Cinderella's castle.
Right,
for
exactly.
lack of a better word, and so that's the part that's a little bit fantastical, particularly when you're looking at Amber Wave's Julianne Moore's character, her storyline, which we didn't talk about. That one of the reasons that she is so eager to take on this maternal role for all of these other kids on set is because she was unable to fulfill her maternal role in her own family. Her husband left her and took her son, and so she's going through the kind of rigmarole with the court of trying to get access to her child again. And the as it turns out, the judge in her, we get a little bit of a hearing with her, and the judge is played by another porn actress named Veronica Hart. Veronica Hart went through very similar child custody issues in her real life, and so she actually her little cameo is actually autobiographical, and so to speak, as we see that just how little respect these actors in the porn industry we're getting through the eyes of this film.
Yeah, yes, but at the same time, I also would say, I mean, they may not be getting the respect, but at the same time, it is a lifestyle that they've chosen to live that doesn't necessarily make for a great family situation. And it's really painful to watch Amber have to go through the custodial battle that she's going through. But at the same time, I do, in at least in context of the film, I feel like it's the right decision that the judge ends up making, that and her husband ended up making, is that, it's not the place that you should be raising his son. It's a terrible environment for him. And to that end, it's a painful situation for her to have to deal with. But I think that's another element that makes the family that they have found work so well.
Oh, Andy, you and your armchair judgery.
That's right.
You probably would have said the same thing about Buck if you were the banker. So Buck goes in with his wife and says, I need a loan. I'm starting this new business. I have all my paperwork is in order. And the guy says, no, we don't endorse pornography. You probably would have said, No, wouldn't you?
Well, see, there I would. That one doesn't make any sense to me at all because it's like you're clearly, you've got the good business sense. So sure,
good business sense, and obviously, something about the equipment.
That's right,
so to speak.
The TK421.
That was a nice nod too.
That was a nice little nod. Yes.
Anyhow, I thought that was. I thought those were two both really powerful sequences in different ways for me.
Yes, absolutely.
So they did a great job there. Oh, we should talk about Mark Wahlberg.
He's pretty good.
He's so good.
He really is. I mean, this was he had already kind of left the Marky Mark name that had gone a few years before when he started acting in some other films that he wasn't in anything that big. Renaissance Man and Fear and Basketball Diaries, I think, was probably where he got a little bit more attention.
Well, that's what got him this role.
It is. And it was actually, I think Anderson wanted Leonardo DiCaprio after seeing him in Basketball Diaries to play this character, but he had kind of already signed on to play in Titanic, which is, probably a pretty good choice to have made. But he said, "Hey, what about Mark?" And and Anderson really liked that idea and met with him, and it worked well. And it was a great role for him to kind of kickstart his acting career, to show that he actually could do things other than just be Marky Mark fronting the Funky Bunch.
Yeah, I can't say enough good things about Wahlberg in this movie. He, I think, does an absolutely legendary transformation over the course of these 2.5 hours, from being the young dumb busboy to being the guy whose whose life has completely fallen apart, getting beaten up by those guys in the trucks. The parking lot. That ends up being an incredibly painful sequence to watch. As you look at how far his life is kind of unraveled, and so for all the comments about Entourage and Transformers and where Mark Wahlberg is now, this film showcases just some real, natural, raw, untrained talent as an actor, and I thought he was just delightful to watch on screen.
And it was also a great way to kind of break the advertising Calvin Klein sort of stuff that he had been doing, and to kind of say, yes, that's kind of something that people were paying attention to. But look, there's a lot more to me than just my body, and let me show you how I can use that to my advantage in this movie.
Well, that's one of the things he'd said was, when he first met Anderson, this is, again, according to the Anderson in the Charlie Rose interview, he said, I sat down with Mark and I said, "What'd you think of the script?" And Mark said, "Well, I've only read 30 pages of it." He said, "Well, I was really mad. I thought, you really want this role and you're only going to read 30 pages of it?" And Mark comes back and he says, "Look, I just want to know, I really love these first 30 pages. I love them. And before I really fall in love with this part, I want to know, do you want me just because I'm the guy who will get in his underwear? Or do you want me because you think there's something I can really deliver to the role?" And I think that ends up being a really kind of transformational moment. According to Anderson, he says, I don't know from nothing. I wanted you because I saw you in Basketball Diaries, and I think you were great, and you stole the role from Leo. Or you stole the film from Leo. I thought you were just terrific. So we'll put that Calvin Klein stuff behind him. Ends up being, I think, a really kind of prophetic choice for Wahlberg's career. It was just so worth it. And then you get, he's had so many other great roles since then,
Happening.
right? Three Kings. Come on. Yes. Three Kings, so good. Perfect Storm, so good. I really liked Perfect Storm. I think I enjoy him in so many of the films that he's done. There are others that I don't, but so many of them that I do. The Departed.
We'll be talking about that one soon.
Yeah. So I think there's a lot to like in his career, and of course one of my very, very favorite comedies is Ted. I Know I'm Alone. I know.
I still haven't even seen it.
No man is I may be an island.
But again, just showing that he's gone so well from different genres too, like the dramatic like this to action to comedy. I mean, he is all over the place and he can handle it all really well.
Yep, absolutely. All right.
Julianne Moore, I love her in this. This is her first Oscar nomination also. And really, it just has gone on to prove that she definitely deserves it. I mean, she's just great in everything she does. This is the first of her 2 times working with Paul Thomas Anderson, the second time being Magnolia.
Mm-hmm.
And she's great. I mean, last year was a good year for her. She won an Oscar. She was in Hunger Games. I mean, she's just keeps getting better and better.
William H. Macy. We talked a little bit about him. Ends up being the cuckold in the film, and in right in the midpoint of the film, the New Year's party.
Right, the reason that this is on our New Year's list. Right,
he goes in and once again discovers his wife at this New Year's party. Nina Hartley is having sex with another man, and so he, in another legendary tracking shot. First, he's looking for her. He opens the door, finds her. He closes the door and walks calmly out to his car, where he gets a gun, and he comes back in, shoots her, shoots the man she's with. Man or men, we don't ever actually see them, walks back down the hall, smiles at the party, and shoots himself in the mouth. And it is incredibly, again, that the tonal shift from what is a fun party, everybody's gathering at the party, the locus of attention is way off by the pool, to incredibly violent locus of attention right in the middle of the hallway of the entry hall of the house. It ends up happening really fast and gets really violent. And startlingly real.
Oh, it's brutal.
Yeah,
it's a great tool to use. I hate using the word tool, but it's a great tool in the screenwriting, in the screenplay here, to kind of kick off the huge switch to the 80s into the darkness.
Yeah. John C. Reilly.
Just love him. He's just so great. And another actor who's proven his versatility in a lot of different genres. I think he's just so fun to watch. I pretty much enjoy him in anything he does.
He's a utility player in this film. He doesn't really have that transformation. But we're introduced to him in a game of sort of verbal one-upsmanship that is really, it's worth paying attention to. It's a funny little bit of script, and he and Mark Wahlberg talking about over margaritas, talking about how much they squat, how much they bench, and then the dive sequence, where he's talking about the mistakes that Mark makes jumping into the pool, is really great, and it sort of sets the tone for this. I think a whole sequence of people wanting to make sure they look cool in the eyes of others.
Yeah, and with this group of people too.
Yeah.
I think it's a critical thing. I mean, it's not just the porn industry really, but actors in general.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's something that they latch onto is kind of that need to be accepted and all of that. I mean, not that I want to make it seem like it's just them. I mean, pretty much.
Well, yeah, because
likes to feel accepted, right?
It's a similar vibe in American Psycho that we've sort of talked about peripherally
Absolutely.
before, which is this idea of I need to be so cool in the eyes of others, and that was very much an '80s trope, right? I mean, that was a less than zero. That was that's kind of the thing we're celebrating here, is just how well we're appreciated in the eyes of others, and how futile that search ends up being. The quest for appreciation ends up being.
Right. You mentioned Philip Seymour Hoffman already. Philip Baker Hall, we kind of touched on. He's been in a number of Anderson's films. Ricky Jay pops in, and he's always fun to see.
Yes, Ricky Jay is the cinematographer, cameraman.
Yeah, and it's nice to see. He doesn't actually do any magic in the film, but it's just funny that there is magic in the film with him, which I find funny because he's a renowned magician.
And it's John C. Reilly as Reed Rothschild, who's ultimately a dope, but pulls off some pretty funny tricks.
Yeah, and his conversation with Buck about the evil forces and everything. That's just a great little bit. Yeah. That's fun. And Heather Graham. I mean, I enjoy Heather Graham. She's an interesting actress, and I don't know. I enjoy some of the stuff that she's done, but she just seems to have kind of gotten stuck in stuff because of her looks. At least that's my impression. And I think that there may be more to her. I just don't know if she's ever really had a huge chance.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think back to, could I say my favorite Heather Graham movie? This would probably be it.
This is probably mine as well. Either that or, I mean, I did like her in Austin Powers, The Spy Who Shagged Me. I thought she was very funny in that.
She was very funny.
Really funny in Bowfinger.
I have no memory of it. Saw it a couple times. No memory of it.
I mean, she's been in a wide variety of stuff, and I think that she has kind of shown that she could do stuff. But she seems to really kind of, things like The Hangover. Those are the things that stick out to me, and I don't know if those are things that.
That's too bad, because I think I'm with you. Like there's probably more, and she just hasn't. She's been a bit pigeonholed.
And then Burt Reynolds. I mean, I know we already talked about him a little bit, but it was an interesting project for him to take on, and he definitely kind of butted heads with Anderson during the production of this. I think that in retrospect, I think Anderson and the actors, the younger actors, they felt that he was really kind of not connecting because he was a different generation of actor. He was a much older actor coming on to work with all these young kids on this project. He didn't necessarily get the project. And afterward, when he saw the cut of it, I mean, it was just kind of a legendary thing where he said, I can't believe, I was in this garbage. He fired his agents for letting him be in it. And then he goes on to win a Golden Globe for it, get tons of accolades for the film. I mean, I can't remember how many different awards he was nominated for or won for his performance in this film. I think he won 6 awards for playing in this film and was nominated for 4 more. So, I mean, no, I'm wrong. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. He won 10 awards for this film and was nominated for 4 more. So he got a lot of accolades for this film after he had kind of bagged on it and said that he was just so upset for having been a part of it. And so it's an interesting perspective, and I think a lot of that just came from him feeling like he had been duped a lot in his career and everything. But I mean, I think he's great in this film. I enjoy him so much. I think he brings a lot of that heart to it and to that family nature of the film.
Best film since Hooper.
I don't even know what Hooper is.
Oh, Andy. Really?
No, what is it?
Sonny Hooper?
No.
Oh, nuts.
I've seen more of his. I mean, oddly enough, I've seen a number of his films in the 70s and 80s that were more like The White Lightning and the Gator, Smoking the Bandit, Cannonball Run.
This was his chance. I think Hooper was his chance for him to take the Smoking the Bandit kind of character and age him and be a little bit more sober or somber, I think, a performance. And so he plays this aging stuntman, and he is upstaged by the plucky upstart stuntman played by, yes, your favorite and mine, Jan Michael Vincent.
Oh, well, that's why
I got him. Jan Michael Vincent reference in. Sally Field is back in this one. Brian Keith. I mean, it's a great cast. I really like this movie. I think it's underappreciated in this. So you need to add Hooper to your list because it's a fun one. 1978.
I'll have to.
Yeah.
I mean, I think he's great in some of the stuff. Deliverance. I mean, he's just great in that film. That's a solid film. But yeah, man, I think he. I mean, up through All Dogs Go to Heaven, I kind of watched some of his stuff, and then he kind of disappeared. I actually really enjoyed him in Striptease. I actually thought he was really funny in that, the Vaseline in his boots and everything. I mean, he was pretty funny. I mean, he's been in a lot of things, and some of them don't work as well as others, but he's he's fun to watch on screen. I do enjoy watching him.
I do too. And this film, I think, was a chance for him to come back and do something of some great substance, and I think he did. It's unfortunate it happened kind of with such agita around it, but he delivered a performance that's just, for him, it's for the ages. I mean, I think he absolutely gave us an icon in Jack Horner.
Yeah, he was offered a role in Magnolia, but turned it down. No surprise, I guess, because they weren't getting along. But Philip Seymour Hoffman ended up working in 5 Anderson films. He only did not work in There Will Be Blood and Inherent Vice, and I guess anything now that will happen afterward. But any idea who, because PTA is one of those guys who likes to work with actors that he's worked with before.
Mm-hmm.
So Philip Seymour Hoffman is the one who's been in most of his films with 5. Any idea who's next with 4 films?
You're saying that, so it must be a surprise.
I don't know if it's a surprise, but it's like, oh, okay, I guess I can see that. It wasn't who I was expecting.
Gosh, I don't know.
It's Melora Walters.
Who is Melora Walters?
She is Buck Swope's wife.
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
Oh, totally.
She hooks up with John C. Reilly in Magnolia. She was also in Hard 8, and she was also in The Master.
Wow. I would not have said that. I didn't really say anything. But he's worked with, it's mostly because he's worked with, I don't know, between Boogie Nights and Magnolia, it was like the same cast, pretty much.
Yeah, right. Those 2 films had so many of the same people. Absolutely.
My first response, which I knew was going to be wrong, but I thought it would be funny if it was Luis Guzman, because he's so good.
Yes.
And he's got to be up there, right? I mean, he's
only in 3.
God,
Boogie Nights, Magnolia, and Punch Drunk Love.
I'll be darned.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you win this round, Andy.
Did you want to? We already talked about cinematography, but we should mention that it was Robert Elswit who is the cinematographer here,
because it was so good.
Because it was so good, and we've talked about him a couple times before with Syriana and Red Belt and The Town.
Oh yes,
and The Bourne Legacy. He's done a lot of stuff.
Stuff.
Gosh, he's so good.
Yeah, so good. We should talk about Michael Penn, who put together the soundtrack.
Yeah, and has a brief cameo. I like the music. I think that it works fine for the context of the film here.
You are not excited enough about it. It's a great soundtrack.
It is. I think that the thing is that I get so caught up in the fantastic music selections all through the film that the actual score itself kind of disappears a little bit for me, which is probably not a fair thing to say, but it's true. That's what happens. And so while I do like the music that Michael Penn does here, I end up walking away from this film just singing all of the fantastic songs.
No, yeah, I mean, you're right. I think it's great.
I actually really love that the film begins with Over Black with kind of this dark circus tune, and that tune comes back toward the end, which really lends a lot to the nature of this world. I think it's kind of a morbid circus. Really
long opening. I mean, it's not legendarily long, but it's uncomfortably long before we're introduced to the hot tracks.
Yes.
All right. Let's talk about the money.
The dollars.
Yeah.
Yeah, this film, considering everything, it did pretty well for itself. It was a long movie, as we said. It was about, 2.5 hours, right?
Yeah, 2.5 hours.
Yeah. This film, and that obviously is going to hurt its cost per profit per finished minute, but it cost $15 million. This was a film that I think it was Michael DeLuca at New Line said, because PTA really got screwed over when he did his previous film Sydney, which was re-released and recut as Hard 8. And he did finally get his cut out there after, I think he submitted it directly to Cannes without the permission or without the approval of the company that released it. But because of the problems he had with that film, when he was pitching this film, everybody really liked the script, but he said, look, I want this film to be made the way I'm going to make it. It's going to be over 3 hours, and it's going to be NC-17. And DeLuca said, you can have it, but I'll give you $15 million to make it, but you can only have one of those. It either has to be R or it has to be under 3 hours. And PTA gave in on the rating and said, okay, I'll take it as a challenge to make a movie about the porn industry that is going to be R-rated. And so he took that as a challenge, and he still came under 3 hours. But so he was given $15 million to make this movie, which in today's dollars is about $21.8 million. So it's a decent budget, but it's not huge, especially for a long movie like this.
Yeah, that's what I was going to. Especially for a long movie with such a big cast of B+, A- players.
Yeah, absolutely. And some that have gone on to be A+ by now.
Right.
It ended up making domestically about $26.4 million and about 16.7 million internationally. And then adjusted, when you look at adjusted total gross, that is about 62.5 million. So the film did well for itself. It was long, so adjusted profit per finished minute was about 268,000. So, it obviously gave this young PTA a career.
Well, it's totally worth it.
Absolutely.
Let's rank it.
Let's do it.
Head over to flickchart.com/thenextreel. You can see all of our films. What is this? 217 films?
Oh, goodness.
Is that what makes it? That's what it is. 217 films that we have done on the Flick Chart. You should check it out and start up your own account if you haven't already, and make sure you start with this one. I think this one's I'm pretty excited about this one. This is our first film of 2017. And I think we're kicking it off with a bang.
It's a good one. Let's kick it off.
I'm just going to say, this is, and I'm going to make a prediction, this will be our top-rated film of 2016 by the end of this show.
Yes. I think that's fair to say. All right, first up, Boogie Nights or The Bad Seed?
Oh, Boogie Nights.
Definitely Boogie Nights.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Boogie Nights or Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind?
Boogie Nights. Boogie Nights. Boogie Nights.
I'm going to say Eternal Sunshine.
I'm going to take you to it.
Okay, let's do it. One,
two, three.
Paper.
Ooh.
One,
two, three.
Paper. Scissors.
See, you're screwing it. Right now, you're screwing it. This is on you.
It is on me. I'll take that. Boogie Nights or The Killing?
Boogie Nights.
Little Stanley Kubrick. Yeah, I'll say Boogie Nights. Boogie Nights or About a Boy?
Boogie Nights.
I certainly get more pleasure out of watching About a Boy, but I'll give it to Boogie Nights for the filmmaking prowess.
Doesn't matter, you've already screwed it.
Or bravura. Bravura. Boogie Nights are for a few dollars more.
Boogie Nights.
I'll say Boogie Nights. Boogie Nights or Ronin?
Ronin.
And I'll say Boogie Nights.
Okay. I'll go Boogie Nights.
Okay.
But I don't have to feel guilty about it.
That's right. Listen to you. Aye. All right. Well, we got Boogie Nights or Sleepless in Seattle.
Oh, I'm 100% Boogie Nights. 110.
I'll say Sleepless in Seattle. But I'll give you Boogie Nights, and I don't have to feel guilty about it.
Well played, sir.
And there we are, number 56 out of 217.
That is too low. You broke this one.
That's on me.
Oh.
Sorry.
Yeah. You're going to regret that in the morning.
I don't know if I will. I don't know. I'm really torn. I really like both of these films quite a bit. It's just that Boogie Nights, it just is a hard film to watch just because of the subject. I always end up feeling just dirty, and I feel like I've crawled out of the gutter after I watch it. And as much as I enjoy everything that's going on in it, I love the performances, I love the story, I love the filmmaking. It is a dirty subject, and it's just I get done with it, and I'm like, okay, I need to go take a shower now.
All right. No, I mean, I hear it. Some people are just wired for this stuff, and some people are not.
There you go.
You could tell your family, don't worry, kids. I'm not wired for porn. Where do we? What's your letterboxd on this one?
I think I'm at 4 stars.
I'm 4.5.
All right, 4.5. That'll give us a 4.5 rating.
Yes, it will.
And I'm okay with that. I feel 4.5 is very fair for this film.
Great. It is a great
it really
film.
is.
Very
it really is.
Yeah. And I should say, Andy, where do we go now that we have done we've introduced the Next Reel 2016 with a bang, so to speak.
Yes, indeed.
Where do we go from here?
A bit of an explosion.
Because we are simple people. We're very simple people.
That's all it takes.
Where do we go from here?
We're going to kick off a new David Mamet series, but this is going to be a David Mamet series of films that he did not direct. There's scripts that he wrote. I think Glenn Ross is the only one that is based on an actual play of his. I think the rest were projects that he wrote specifically for the screen. We're going to be doing The Verdict first, and then The Untouchables, Glenn Ross, and ending with The Edge.
Good ones.
Should be a lot of fun. It'll be a fun little series.
If I recall, you were looking forward to this series more than the last time we addressed David Mamet.
I enjoy David Mamet quite a bit. It's Rebecca Pigeon that I have problems with. And when he's directing, I mean, it's his wife, so he always puts her in. And these, the filmmakers don't feel obligated to put her in it. So I'm much more inclined to watch these ones. It's terrible of me to say.
It is. It is terrible, but all right, you get to live with yourself.
It's just true. Right. Yes, indeed.
I'm very excited about that, and so make sure to check that out. That's happening. It's happening next week.
Absolutely.
Anything else we need to talk about? Anything
Should we
at
tell
all?
people that we have our first speakeasy is going to also be released next week, right?
I think we should tell people that.
Yes, we should.
Introducing our new series, we're very excited about the TNR Speakeasy. Our very first guest, Abraham Ben-Ruby, is going to be bringing one of his very favorite films to the table to talk about. Again, if you missed our big announcement, you're not sure what the Speakeasy is, it's pretty much like this show, except we're bringing somebody from the industry, actor, director, writer, to share with us films that have inspired them. And Abe he's an all-around great guy. He has... if you followed Abe at all from his career on ER or the many films that he has done, he was just on Bosch, on Amazon, you may have seen him. He is about to be in a new film with Chris Pine called The Finest Hours, released in January. We'll be doing that on Film Board. He has very broad tastes. But he tends to jive with the more supernatural. I think the weirder films, the darker films. And so when he came to us to tell us that he wanted to join us to talk about Peter O'Toole's My Favorite Year, I think it's fair to say we were blown away.
It definitely didn't fit kind of a lot of the films that he really enjoys, but
certainly did not. But the conversation we had was surprising and interesting, and it was a great film. Neither of us had seen this film, right?
Nope.
Neither of us had seen My Favorite Year, and so it was a great way to be introduced to the film with a wonderfully charismatic and warm and charming and generous person. So that is also going to be released next week, My Favorite Year, on the TNR Speakeasy. So be on the lookout for that.
Absolutely.
That's all we've got. Thanks, everybody. I got to go to bed.
I've got to go look in the mirror at my one special thing.
Okay, so Amazon, I looked for a low rating, and this is one of those films where there aren't that many, and most of them are about the DVD.
There's a lot of love for this movie.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot of love. So I've got one Joseph writes in, and this was just last year, December 14th, 2014. Well, I gave it... the title is, At Times, It Appears to Be Moving Toward a Remarkably Moving Portrayal of a Sad, Interesting Industry. Well, I gave it 2 stars, not 1. At times, it appears to be moving toward a remarkably moving portrayal of a sad, interesting industry.
I wonder who got that.
It is often so strong and stunning that the many easy comic moments may be missed. Burt Reynolds, who at first appears to be giving a subtle, tired, destroyed portrait, becomes simply bland and boring. Philip Seymour Hoffman is brilliantly unsettling and sympathetically disturbing. Ultimately, there is too much gratuitous everything, making the adventure too long and ineffective. I think it's funny that Joseph picks out Burt Reynolds, who deserves to be picked out, and Philip Seymour Hoffman, who ends up being sort of an ancillary character, and no mention of Mark Wahlberg at all, which is sad.
Interesting. And it's funny.
It's like that. There's that great game Doug Benson plays on now on
Douglas movies.
Douglas movies. There's that game which is like the cable billing game where he makes people guess the movie based on the 2 title characters that his cable company puts in their TV guide about a movie, and they're just random like bottom billing people that you would never have guessed be in the movie. That's kind of what this feels like.
It's the Rosencrantz and Guildenstern
exactly
version of the review of the film.
Anyway.
Right. Well, it's funny because yours said it was too much gratuitous everything. Mine gave it a 1 star, and it's J.A.S. Hill, or Jashil, perhaps. Gave it 1 star. Said, disappointing. Sorry. Boring. Don't understand what all the hoopla was about. Going from gratuitous everything to boring.
Not enough anything.
Not enough anything. There's nothing going on in this film.
Yeah.
It's I don't know what that Josh Hill was looking for, because there's a lot in this movie, and to find it boring is definitely not what I think anybody would say.
Yeah, I don't see it.
But there you go.
Once again, thank you, Amazon. It is hard to believe we have been having in-depth conversations about movies since 2011.
You are telling me. Producing this show week after week requires a ton of work behind the scenes. If you'd like to help support our efforts, one easy way is by using our Originals page when shopping for books and movies that we've covered.
Just visit thenextreel.com/originals. Your purchases made through our links give us a small commission at no extra cost to you, and allow us to keep having these great discussions.
Season 5 had some great adaptations, like our Meryl Streep Oscar-nominated performances series. We covered adaptations like Kramer vs. Kramer, Sophie's Choice, and The French Lieutenant's Woman.
It's a real Sophie's Choice between those books. You see what I did there?
Yeah. And I don't think it's quite at the level of a real Sophie's Choice.
We also did Snowpiercer for our Bong Joon-ho series, adapted from the French graphic novel Le Transpersonnage. Man, I love that movie.
We had our 2-part 1939 series that included adaptations like Gone with the Wind, Ninotchka, The Women, and The Hound of the Baskervilles.
A number of those 1939 movies, like Goodbye Mr. Chips, also tied into our recent 1940 Academy Award Best Picture nominee series.
Our naughty children horror series had creepy adaptations like The Bad Seed, Village of the Damned, The Innocents, and Children of the Corn.
For our Hayao Miyazaki series, we talked about his take on Lupin III with The Castle of Cagliostro, plus his own The Wind Rises.
Some great listener choice picks too, Viridiana and The Great Escape.
And for our David Mamet Wright series, The Verdict, The Untouchables, and Glengarry Glen Ross.
Plus, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang from our Shane Black series, adapted from Brett Halliday's novel, Bodies Are Where You Find Them.
Dive into the sources for all of these at thenextreel.com/originals.
Every book you buy helps support the show. Check out thenextreel.com/originals today and find your next read.